yeah, and it was clear that it was like something to look at and not anymore ingest. So it was kind of this weird dichotomy between.
You could eat it actually. Some of them.
You could eat it.
Yeah.
Ah, nice. I didn't know that. That's great. While you were in the show, or you had on a different stack?
For the opening, we had some blue bread.
Nice. Good.
Like you could eat them.
Good. Yeah, it's funny with color, because when people eat something that is artificially colored or naturally colored, you can have 5 different breads and 5 different colors, and people will believe one tastes different than the other. So it's very interesting how color manipulates also your sense of taste and reading the situation. So I would have loved to know what they thought when they ate it. Excellent. Well, great. Thank you, Augustas. Marinella, Senatore, very nice that you joined us as well. Nice to see you. Yes, of course, I think I would love to dive right into SOND, the School of Narrative Dance that you founded in 2012, which now you're in your 12th year. Yeah. And sort of this school where you try to share the idea of storytelling through all kinds of different methods that are not necessarily non-linear, so through choreography, through self-training, through merging different social groups together, through the idea of protest, or using the form of protest as a creative output. And I would love you to say a little bit, because I understand from your projects they take very long time to prepare, because even though it might look, once a procession of yours happens on the street, and it might look haphazard or by chance, it's a very well planned through, even if there are amateurs involved, a very well planned through choreography, from what I understand. But the nice thing, of course, I guess the whole run up to it and preparing of it. Can you tell us a little bit about the School of Narrative Dance?
Sure, with pleasure. Actually, the school was a sort of container for me. At a certain point of my work and life, I realized that all the experiences I collected in different countries needed a sort of house, because it was, at a certain point, it was nice and easy for me to get into a community, because I lived nomadically for over 20 years. So I used to live with the community I worked with for years. But it wasn't so easy, especially on an emotional level, for an ecology of affection that it's always very important, to leave such communities, to leave them and leave them without a sort of umbrella under which they could have continued to as a new community, completely new, not based on ages or ethnicity or whatever, gender, but based on the shared creative moment that we created. And it's true that the conceiving of the project is pretty long, and the gathering, it's always, there are just 2 rules, let's say, in the School of Narrative Dance, that the final restitution is always something that we do in the street. And usually when we do in the street, it's a sort of parade procession. This is the perfect, always, because it's discussed, even it's a rule, it's still discussed. It's the perfect display for all these lives and narratives and contents that we work and get deep together. The very long part of this is when we approach a new city. We start there. The School of Narrative Dance is an idea of school, so it's not a basic building school. It's nomadic, obviously free of charge. So it must be invited and hosted by usually institutions like a museum, a foundation, but also universities. And I hope more and more diversification. in the future. And when we approach the community, of course, we don't want to be abusive. This is exactly the opposite I want to do. And in order to I don't want to have pre-existent ideas, not even about the final restitution, not even about the possible choreography and dance. I decided to name this container school because I was very critical about the hierarchical system of education. I'm a professor myself, and I completely detest the vertical system of education. So I wanted to create a very horizontal space for sharing, not based even on degrees, but on sharing of life experience, where concepts like failure, productivity, and all these things weren't allowed, and people could literally rewrite and rethink the concept of vulnerability as well. So it's very, very keen for us to work on mental health issues all the time, not only social disequality or lack of equality or other very important social issues. And when we talk about resistance and protest, we talk about a very large and wide list of things that are really not respectful and offensive for a lot of people. So when we used to work with stigmatized group and with very vulnerable or so-called fragile people like homeless or people with mental or physical discapacity, the last thing that we receive in return from such groups is the fact that they are fragile or vulnerable. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. Sometimes you can find the same people sleeping in the street because they live there, performing the day of the final restitution and completely rewrite their dignity and also their role in the new society, small society that they have created together. So this obviously is a long process of talking with people in the community, reaching out, social scientists, unemployed, illiterate, job centers, libraries, hubs of the city. So we create a big network of local people. This is very important for me to highlight. That is not my team coming from abroad and every time imposing a line of work, but we work with the local people also for the organization and for all the reaching out. And so our teacher in the school are local people as well. And this is very important because it's a great risk that I adore to take. But of course, it's a big risk because you never know what you are going to find. Maybe in certain communities, we spread open call when we invite people, okay? And we spread open call both for teachers and students. Even our idea of student is very much accorded to Jacques Rancière, so the emancipation of the student from the limits of the teacher, the master. But when we do that, of course, we never know what disciplines, actually, what languages we are going to use and how we can explore all this potentiality on the body. And that's why I call it this narrative dance, intending for dance something very ancestral, belonging to the idea of movement of community, not a choreographic jazz. Choreography is one of the last thing that we do, but we work a lot on parkour and mental health, or on emancipation and empowerment through the movement, mindful movements. And again, we can have experience of literature, of history of art, or craftsmanship, depending on the local energies that we find and that want to join the project. And then we create somehow a final restitution in the street. And it's like a storyline in the street. So we englobe the architecture, we englobe every facade, balcony, terrace, gates, and also a lot of instances that come from the street. So it's a physical space and it's a social space for rethinking. For us, it's very important to point out that it's when we're in the street that things can have an idea or possibility of transformation.
Well, it's beautiful. Thank you very much. I mean, you speak also about active citizenship, you know, and it's nice. It's nice to think about these vulnerabilities that are around everywhere, and that you activate and give space to people. And I think, you know, as we've spoken also with Koki, I think it's just this idea of the vulnerable existence and histories. There's a nice link there between your work. I can only imagine it must be quite hard to give enough space and time for certain people to open up to your project, you know. Because I mean, how many people are you when you say you always speak in the we form, you know, when you say we, the school is nomadic, and you make an open call for teachers and students. So how big is who's all instructing the teachers and students to coexist and learn from each other?
Well, it's very difficult as life is. So we have conflicts, we have fights, struggle, but it's my role, the one of the activator. I like very much to imagine myself as somebody that activates the other instead of guiding the other. And this is exactly for what people reach out to me all the time, day and night, when I work. And I guarantee in a certain way their dignity. And this is like a very formal pact, that agreement that we have at the very beginning of the project. And honestly, it was extremely consuming for me in terms of personal experience for so many years, to work nomadic, to live nomadically, and don't have really my own house inside, but changing all the time, being accepting by communities, and going to funeral and birthday parties or whatever. And yeah, I worked with over 8 million of people. So the School of Narrative Dance is a very fortunate project, because everywhere we go, we always have thousands of participants. And I promise it's not the number my focus, but until a certain point, it was difficult to create the confiance and to make people feel relaxed. But from one point onwards, it became extremely easy, because we have a School of Narrative Dance almost everywhere in over 24 countries. And these groups of people are still together. So when we have a School of Narrative Dance project somewhere, the closest nucleo come. And this is great for the new participants, because it creates a lot of trust and confidence, and it's great. But my role, it's something that I negotiated with myself for a long time. So at the very beginning of my career, I imagined that I was an organizer or coordinator, somebody that was, like Anna said, like a glue among all the elements, not the human elements and the social and instances. Then I realized just recently, aging, because I'm getting more severe, that I am an ingredient of this, a very fundamental ingredient.